Good day, my dear students. We're going to discuss on the parts of lesson planning and designing your lesson plan and what is expected in every part of the lesson plan. So we're going to use the UP template, okay? So your unit plan may have the following. Remember, I asked you to create and design your unit plan in the past weeks. So it would probably look like you have a standard, you have your instructional objectives, and then you have day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for designing a lesson plan, I ask you to consider one of the days where you're going to specify and we're going to design what will happen in that day, and thus create and write your lesson plan. So what we hope to answer today is that what are the elements, what are expected in that lesson plan, what are the key parts? Basically, there are 6, but in UP lesson plan, there are some parts that we want you to also specify. As you know, we wanted you to really plan for that lesson. What exactly is SMART criteria? What do you mean by learning outcomes? And how are we going to make use of Bloom's taxonomy and all that? Okay, so if I'm going to ask you to give 4 words that you feel describe the elements of a lesson plan, what would that be? So you may pause the video if you wish. So where are the parts of a lesson plan? So of course, from the word lesson plan, we wanted to plan the lesson, and we wanted, when we say planning, we don't want to just leave it to, we don't want to just play by ear and decide right then and there. We wanted it to be organized, to be structured, because again, we wanted to ensure that we make the most of the time. We wanted to maximize that little time and achieve what we hope for. So basically, you want to ask first in a lesson plan, who am I teaching? Because of course, if you're teaching 2nd grade and you're teaching 8th grade, there's a difference. So you have to be able to identify that. Who am I teaching? Who am I teaching? Then after that, you ask, what are you really teaching? What am I teaching? Are you teaching social studies, math, and also how will the students know if how will I know if students understand? Of course, I will talk about assessment and how will you teach it, and how will you teach it. So basically, what exactly is the structure? What is the flow? What will come first? What are we going to do to hook the students and all of that? So, but first, let's clarify why the need to come up with a lesson plan. So a lesson plan is, of course, a teacher's daily guide for what students need to learn, how it will be taught, and how learning will be measured. It has to be planned. It has to be written. It has to be structured. So lesson plans help teachers be more effective in the classroom by providing a detailed outline to follow each class period. So for new teachers, we want you to really write even how you're going to introduce, how you move from one concept to another, and even the time allotted for specific activity. And as you maybe gain experience, and maybe you have already observed from your mentor teacher, some of them may just, like have bullet points on their plan. But as beginning teacher, we want you to be as specific as possible, so that your mentor teacher, or me, your supervisor, or now your professor, will have will be able to really see that you know what to do during a learning session. So the lesson plan ensures that every bit of class time is spent teaching new concepts and having meaningful discussions, not just figuring it out on the fly. Okay, so there are, of course, some key parts in an effective lesson plan. But as I said, in UP, we also require subparts of these key parts. Okay, so we'll discuss each one of that. So first is lesson objective. What is a lesson objective or a learning objective? So a learning objective should describe what students should know or be able to do at the end of that session. Okay, so at the end of the lesson or at the end of the period that they're not able to do before. That means it is a result of, the activity. It is a result of them acquiring the skills. So what exactly are those behavior that you wanted to see as a result of learning? So basically, at the start, you may want to visit first and consider the state standards. So say, for example, if you look into the Montana content standards for social studies, you will see that maybe explain the roles, and then you wanted to begin planning your lesson. Okay, so let's talk about first on what is SMART learning objectives. So a SMART is from the word specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. So when you write your learning objectives, look at your learning objective. Is it specific? Meaning, well, if someone will look at your objective, will they not ask questions like, what do you mean by this? Is it also measurable? Like, will we exactly know what the students will demonstrate at the end? Can we really measure? Can we have something to see, to hear, in terms of the skill? Is the objective attainable? Can they really perform that? Can they really demonstrate that? And of course, is it really relevant? Especially, is it aligned to the standard? And of course, it has to be time-based. So aligned to your syllabus, aligned or on your curriculum. So let's say, for example, the content standards that you choose, and I'm going to use this for the rest of the rest of the lesson plan so we can follow. Let's say, for example, for first grade in social studies, I want to pick the standards on recognize the people and their roles who create and carry out rules for the school and the classroom. So you would see that there are, of course, several people. They have roles that they play in the school and in the classroom. And you may also, as a part of a team of grade 1 teachers, also include those that are people in the community who are called community helpers. So you can also make it part there. So when we write our instructional objectives, again, this must be clear on what students will learn. So maybe I would write it like, given a list of community helpers, grade 1 students will be able to match each helper with their contribution to maintaining order and safety within the school and community. So even if the community is not there, again, the state standards could be the minimum, but we can go beyond if you think that it is also ready and it is also approved by your team and your school and your principal. So when you look at an instructional objective, the table will help us. So aside from SMART, this will also help you determine whether you have already the characteristics of a clear learning objective, like they're free from jargon, they do not have vague tasks, and they only describe the essential, okay? And they can be achieved within the given period, or they can be demonstrated in a tangible way. Like, for example, if I'm gonna write there, the instructional objective will, the instructional objective students will be able to appreciate, like, in what way can we determine that they did appreciate. So that is something that may be vague. So is it fair and equitable? So you can go back and stop the video if you want to read those ones. Okay, so again, why should we write objectives? It is because we wanted to design appropriate material. I mean, you have to begin with what will be the end. So you should be able to like determine whether at the end of the lesson, at the end of the session, at the end of the unit, this is what the students will be able to do at the end of this lesson. So it will help organize also this help students organize study toward accomplishment of objectives, and it also provides evidence of objective accomplishment if you have very clear objectives. So again, why? To provide direction, to provide guidelines. It will help us if the objectives are clear. Okay, so other examples of writing clear objectives are these. Do not write to provide a lecture. Of course, you're going to provide a lecture, right? Do not write as objectives. Give students an activity, because that is a process. That's not the what students will be able to do. Okay, so to discuss, to discuss fraction, that is a teacher activity or teacher's role, not the students. So students will be able to learn. Learn may not be a good term as it is not measurable. Okay, so an objective should have 4 parts: A, B, C, D: audience, behavior, condition, and degree. So these are examples of not a good term in terms of behavior. And then in terms of audience, you can write it this way. All right, so again, a behavior is always a verb, okay, an action that you can measure, observe objectively. So you can read also those. All right, so those are, so if I'm going to write my instructional objectives, students will be able to explain. So you notice there's an audience, there's a behavior, and then another students will be able to, our grade 3 students, so that's another way of writing your audience, will be able to explain the role. That is, explain is a behavior. All right, so if I'm also going to write it a different way, provided with the map template, that's a condition. That means that is the situation, the circumstances that the students will be in when they are performing the action, when they're demonstrating to me the behavior that will tell me that they learn. So that's how you put a condition. So provided with a map template, mind map template, students will be able to identify or explain the key roles. That's the behavior. With no error is a degree. So again, the degree is to what extent are you expecting the students to what quality the students will demonstrate this behavior. So these are examples of condition. These are examples of degree. Again, audience is who will do the behavior, will do the skill. Behavior is what exactly are they going to demonstrate to you as a teacher, so that you would know that learning takes place and that your students have developed the skill. So if I'm going to go back to my instructional objective, the instructional objective is given a list of community helpers. Grade 1 students will be able to match each helper with their contribution to maintaining order and safety within the school and community with 90% accuracy. So again, I want to show this so that within your lesson plan, you can review your objective. Does it have the audience, meaning who will exhibit the performance? Does it have observable performance? I mean, what observable performance is the learner going to exhibit? That's behavior. The conditions are provided for the learner at the time of evaluation. And the degree is what constitutes a minimum acceptable response. So these are also very good way to determine that the level of thinking you require, you expect from students, like the Bloom's taxonomy. So if you say at the end of the lesson, or grade 1 students will be able, or grade 6 students will be able to define, students will be able to list, you will see that it is just level 1 in terms of Bloom's taxonomy. Actually, that's not even thinking. That means when it is at the lowest level in the Bloom's taxonomy, you're just asking students to tell you what you told them, or you're just developing memory or memorization. So if the goal here is, that's not bad at all, that you are on the level 1, but we hope that you also develop and hope to design a lesson that requires higher order thinking skills, or HOTS. So maybe you can ask and maybe find a way where students can defend, students will demonstrate, students will, like illustrate, students will have to discuss, students will have to write a question, or students will have to argue, students will have to differentiate. These are higher thinking, or students will have to design or write or formulate. Okay, so so when you write your objectives, look at the Bloom's taxonomy and be aware that you may be just, and even in your questioning, that you may be just focused in this part. Okay. Second is on some related requirements in the lesson plan. So lesson planning has to really align with the national or the state standards, and if there's local standards, do consider them. All right. So the next one would be in our template, in the UP lesson plan template, you're also asked to write and determine the opportunities you'll also provide with students. If you notice, there's some prompt there. Okay, so just say, for example, for this particular objective that I have here, I might write, the students will have the opportunity to discuss and be engaged in group discussions, as they will compare and contrast the different roles of individuals in the city, of the different communities, thus fostering cooperation and collaboration skill. Or in the long run, you will see that I will ask my students to, I will give my students descriptions of the community helper, and then they're going to also discuss in the small groups. So I will have some modification of this, but it is still the same opportunity that students will have be engaged in group discussion. So what are other opportunities? So is there going to be an opportunity for cultural awareness? Is there an opportunity to develop 21st century skills such as research or analysis, or some incidental learning? Like, are they developing text analysis, reading skills, or organizational skills? Do write that in your lesson plan. Okay, so what are the lesson materials? Of course, when you're planning, all the materials have to be anticipated, well, visualized, so that you will not, forget when you're already presenting your lesson. So this section of your lesson plan is a list of materials that you need to teach the lesson and measure student outcomes. So this section prepares you to deliver your lessons every day. And without this list, you may accidentally forget to print an important document or prepare a worksheet or whatever. So the list of materials for each lesson depends on what you plan to teach, how you'll teach it, and how you'll measure the lesson objective. Again, you have to list all the materials. Okay, common types of materials. There are suggestions that we have written in your lesson plan template. So again, be as specific as possible. So maybe just a pause for a while. Do you agree with this? That if you fail to plan, you actually plan to fail. I hope you agree with that. Let's proceed. So we will now focus on lesson procedure. Okay, so the question is, so if I have now the objective, I have now my my state standard is already aligned. I mean, my objective is aligned to my state standard. I have now a clear view of what I have in my daily in the unit plan, on what happened with the daily thing. And then now you know already the topic that you're going to focus on the key the roles of the people in the school, as well as in the classroom, as well as in the community. How are you going to teach it? What exactly is the procedure? So what is the lesson procedure? Your lesson procedure is an in-depth explanation of how the lesson will progress in the classroom. So the lesson procedure is essentially a step-by-step instruction that walk you through everything from the time students enter the classroom until the bell rings at the end of the period. So it is smart to be very detailed. Again, I have highlighted that. Be specific, be more detailed as possible, because again, if that is very clear in your plan, it is very impossible that you will fail during your the delivery of the lesson. Okay, so when you're writing your lesson procedure, you need to choose the type of activities that will help students meet the lesson objective. So when you have this topic and you have the objective already, the objective is what will guide you on what activities, what if there's a video that you're going to show and all that. So think about how will you introduce the topic. So if this is the topic, I'm going to talk about community helper. How will I introduce this topic? What's the best way to teach this information to your students? And how can you incorporate problem solving or critical thinking? And what real life scenarios relate to this topic? Because of course, the question of the students will always be, why am I learning this? Is this relevant? And will I appreciate my learning because it is important? So does this topic lend itself to group work? Again, we have to provide opportunity for students to interact because, of course, social learning theory, as we've learned in the other courses, right? So think about questioning too. So if it's also possible to not just attach the questions you will ask, but really specify that in your lesson plan. So I'm going to show an example of that. Okay, so again, consider student learning process that, the best way to learn is actually for students to first explore and then learn and practice and then reflect and then reinforce. It's also the same as when you're teaching mathematics. Again, students discover a concept and then a concept is explained, they're learning, and then they are apt practice, and then they also have a time for them to reflect and see if they have mistakes, and then maybe some reinforcement and the application. Okay, so this is an example of that process. So exploring, meaning that they can also do this, and then if they're learning and practicing, maybe they're also not taking. There's these particular strategies, but this is of course the majority of the time spent in the class. Okay, so there note taking, there's group discussion, there's debate, there's case study. So a different this is in contradictory to maybe some of us have been exposed and used to teacher always talking and doing the lecturing. And of course, we've learned that that's not very effective when there's little practice, more of discussion from the teacher. Then, of course, they have to do reflect, maybe exit ticket, and there should be checking for understanding and some reinforcement, like they have to have critical thinking activities that also reinforces what exactly is learned and stretch the understanding to find the gaps in knowledge. So there should be activities on that. That's why there will be activities on critiquing, on spotting what is wrong, or even in math, like for example, students will have to determine which one is wrong, or is Eva right, or is Sheila wrong, and all that. So those are a very good activity. So part of in your lesson template is this on number 7, content and teaching strategies of the lesson. So I want you to I want you to break them into what are we going to do in the introduction, what are you going to do in the as you flow in your subject content, and then how are you going to close that, or how do you perfectly do your closure in in that particular session. Let's talk about first introduction. So again, in the introduction, this is the motivational part. Minds on, you have to warm up. You don't just say, okay, today we're going to discuss blah blah blah. How are you going to hook your students? Okay, so some of the suggestions would be, maybe you can conduct a survey, create a graph, give students a post-it, and then ask them to put their votes or put their responses, something like that. So you can have that, but you can also modify the ones I've written here. You can actually like use musical hooks, like ask the class to write a song about a topic and then express their existing knowledge about a topic or concept. So that can be an assignment first, and then when you begin your class, ask them to share that song that they've written about a certain topic. So that could be a good start before you introduce the topic. You can actually also begin playing a game, right? Before you introduce the topic. And then you can also pose a question. This one is also my favorite. Like before I present a a um a certain topic, I put there a question first, like who are the members of our community? What are the different communities, before I present the different community helpers, or who are helping us in in making sure that the community is safe and all that. You can actually, in your start of your lesson, you can ask students to create a concept map. Okay, so concept map can be the start, in the middle, or the last. You can actually ask the students to, at the start of the lesson, do a gallery walk. So get students moving as they explore a range of documents, images, so they can move around, observe, and then you introduce you can actually begin the class by, having a guest speaker, and then introduce the topic, what then you will be learning. You can also use some kinesthetic hooks, like for example in math, before you can ask students to jump, and so engage those that are like those whose learning styles are on the kinesthetic. Okay, so again, right here how you're going to introduce the topic. So those are some of my suggestions. Again, how are you going to motivate the students? How are you going to engage the student at the start of the lesson? Okay, we'll move now to what is expected in terms of subject content and teaching strategies. Okay, what is subject content? I want you to write here specifically how you allot your entire session. Okay, so say for example for a 1 hour, so 10 minutes of the first 10 minutes is hook activity, which is the first part there, which is any of these. Okay, for the hook. Okay, for the introduction. And then maybe the next 10 minutes is a discussion and exploration. So I have suggestion here. Let's say, for example, considering the instructional objective that I shared with you on, what was our instructional objective again? We said that the instructional objective um, is on given a list of community helpers. So the topic is about community helpers, and that is aligned to the um, the key people, or recognize the people in the school as well as in the classroom. And now I'm extending it to include the key people in the community. Again, if the students are ready for that. So that was the ones in the state standard. Okay, so because that is the topic and that is the objective. So maybe I'll begin with the different types of communities, and I will highlight the characteristics. So I will use PowerPoint and then I will use video and all that. So again, in the lesson plan, a copy of the video, the PowerPoint, should be attached, okay, should be included in the plan. Some questions to ask, again, you have to be specific. I will ask questions like, what is a community? So they would answer me like that. Or maybe I'll modify this if my students may find community not a word that they're familiar with. Okay, so or I would say, who are who are the people that makes this place safe? Something that I will begin something that is familiar, like the school. So some of them say the principal, all that. So, but again, it's very important that we ask, we write our questions and we also determine the level in terms of Bloom's taxonomy. And at the same time, we have to also know the type of question. Again, you've learned this convergent. You ask a question that there's a definite answer, and then divergent. These are questions that the answers are not predictable and they can be as varied as your students. So and then you can that will also help you reflect as a teacher that you're not just asking low level, you're not just asking questions where the traffic is just one student answering to the teacher. So that will also help you because you have identified your question in terms of the level that you indeed are asking varied questions that are engaging, questions that expects responses that are not predictable. And then if that is the case, I will also then move into a small group activity. I will have students who will be divided into small groups of 3 or 4 per group, and then they will be provided with pictures with description of community helpers, such as a teacher, librarian. Again, remember that the state standard is recognize the key, the people in their school, but again, so that when it's a school and then the classroom, and then I'm moving outside the communities. So roles of students in the group is assigned, and then of course I'm gonna again during the processing I'm gonna review their task as the note taker. And also, let's just say for example, this is not my first time that I'm gonna do a small group activity, so I'm just gonna put it there that I'm gonna review the task, meaning my students know what the note taker is, what's the timekeeper. Each group will discuss and write how their assigned community helper contributes to the community. So for each group, I'm going to say teacher, librarian, principal here, firefighter, police officer, grocery clerk, and then here. So maybe three or three community helper for each group. They will have description, and then I'm going to provide um, a worksheet or a template where for each particular community helper, and then the description, my students will break it into what exactly is the function, what exactly is the tool that they're using, and what maybe they'll also what exactly is the uniform, something like that. So they're going to present that, meaning it's just a description, like a teacher teaches blah blah blah, and then the students will have to identify the teacher is teaching, and then where can we see them in school. So there would be columns, all that. So that will actually help your students really see that different people play a different role in the community, and that makes the community a good place because we have a role, and then it's also nice because they can recognize and then they know already, and then in the future it's also um, this is the start of them also reflecting on what they wanted to be in the future. So 10:40 to 11, they'll do a gallery walk. So that means after 20 minutes, the students will post their results on the wall, and then students will have a walk in the classroom. So this particular group, whatever they're assigned, and then um, they're given a table, and then there's a representative from the group who will explain that a teacher does this, which is um, different from what a firefighter does, which is different from what a police officer does. So you notice that even if they're breaking the description into function, where we can see that and who is that helper, they're also sharing or identifying the different or giving the differences, and they're comparing the different roles. So that's also an incidental learning from the activity. So that will happen. And then, of course, there will be closure. Again, if whatever is the handout or resource, it has to be attached in the lesson plan. Okay, so I will emphasize that in this particular part, the teaching strategy is using small group discussion and using gallery walk. So now, allow me to present that there are several different teaching strategies. So you have to specify in your lesson plan, what is this teaching strategy? Are you inviting a guest speaker? That's a teaching strategy. Is a teaching strategy a field trip, or visit a community helper, or interview a community helper? That is a teaching strategy. It's reading a book about community helper. That is a literature-based um, teaching strategy, and you've learned that. And then role play is also a teaching strategy. So you have to also emphasize that in your plan. Or are you using a game? That is a teaching strategy. So there's a lot of teaching strategy, but you have to highlight it in your lesson plan. Okay, last is closure. Closure, how are you going to close the lesson or end the period? You don't just say, okay, everyone, that's it, let's just wrap up. You have to facilitate. So maybe in my example of in my example instructional objective and lesson planning, I would maybe write there 2 to 3, that's 3, okay, 2 to 3 students will be asked to share the responses to this question below, so that it's, it's properly facilitated. What did you learn about the different people? Because that's, they already have um, seen and experienced the gallery walk, and how they keep our school and community safe. So that's, I think, a reflective questioning. Again, I've identified a kind of questioning. So you can do reciprocal questioning as part of closure. You can put there an exit ticket. But again, if your closure or as you and your lesson, do not just place there, I'm gonna use exit ticket. I mean, what exactly is in the exit ticket? Is it aligned to the objective and all that? So or are you going to ask a student to give a short takeaway? Are you if you're asking your students to write a journal, at the end, at the closure, you're going to say, please share, something like that. So some of the reinforcement or maybe closure is to maybe explain a certain project and all that. Okay, so assessment method. Of course, part of the lesson planning is the assessment method. So assessment method, we all know assessment. How will you know if the students have learned? What is your way? So to start, there are a dozen of ways to measure quizzes, identify that. You have to be able to see that there are formative and summative assessments in your lesson plan. You have to be able to specify that. So in my example, okay, this is the UP lesson plan template where you place there. So in my example, I'm gonna place there because I'm gonna start with remember that I asked what is a community, or who makes our school safe and in order. So that means my formative assessment would be Q&A, and then I'm gonna do a small group discussion. But you have to also specify what made you say that. Part of my formative assessment is the presentation, the results, and students responding to classmates' queries. Remember the gallery walk? But I will also put there that the rubric with criteria for assessing the gallery walk presentation is attached in the lesson plan. You have to tell me how you're going to rate the students. You don't just look at them and say, okay, that's 15 points. Okay, there should be criteria. And then part of my formative assessments would be homework. So I'm gonna put there what exactly is the homework. Okay, the summative assessment, again, as you know, the summative assessment is really that assessment that will tell you that students have achieved the objective. The formative assessment is your way of trying to determine if you need to reteach, if students need more activities, or are they really learning. So that's part of determining whether they're already there, they've already achieved the objective. But the summative assessment will really tell you, okay, students will have to show me. So in my summative assessment, students will be provided with a list of community helpers on one side of a worksheet and a list of contribution and maintaining safety and order on the other side. Students are then required to match and work this task independently. So you have to tell me exactly how you're going to do the summative assessment. And then I'm gonna attach the worksheet as well as the scoring guide, or if it's on answer key, put it there. Okay, if it's a rubric, because students will do a presentation, students will do role play, students will do a video, so put the rubric there. Okay, so some of the part of the lesson plan also is um, uh, differentiation, okay, for diverse learners. So students will have to, I mean, there are times when you need two, and I hope you consider differentiation because some of the students will need more time, more activities to be able to learn. So, and then of course, this is where accommodation is emphasized. So these are some of the differentiation strategies that you can consider in your lesson plan to accommodate the different levels, the different, maybe in terms of different competencies, different learning styles. I mean, your students are different in several ways, like in terms of comprehension level, in terms of ability to grasp the materials. So consider differentiation for your diverse learners. And then you can stop this video and see and read this one. Okay, so this is an example of an assessment of the collaborative skill in during their small group discussion. So you can put it in your bulletin board. Okay, and the last part in the lesson plan is only completed after your teaching. So reflection, remember that reflection makes you better. So by this point, your lesson has clear objective, a plan, and a way. But if you don't critically consider whether you succeeded, you're doing a disservice to your future students. So these are some of the prompts that will help you really reflect if you did. And then it's also nice when you can really identify that I should have done this, I should have prepare this, I should have considered this, and all those. For me, it's very important that you continue to be humble and and that you're a work in progress, and you continue to listen to feedback and continue to strive to be the excellent teacher your students deserve. So if you have questions, please email me. Okay. So your unit plan may have this, but what is expected is a lesson plan for one of the days or 2 days in your lesson plan. Okay, so please look at Moodle on what is expected. Thank you.